Good afternoon. I'm Dennis Galucki, and welcome to the 477th Imagine Greater Buffalo program and the 99th virtual Imagine lecture hosted by our wonderful Buffalo and Erie County Public Library. This program is created by the Center for the Study of Art, Architecture, History, and Nature and ImagineLifelongLearning.com. Now, this is a different format today. We had technical difficulties with our regular Tuesday program, and so we are recording this for archival purposes. There's no audience participation, and I will engage in our own discussion at the end of our speaker's presentation. Who is our speaker? Our featured speaker is Brian Dold. Brian is the Director of Planning and Research at the Olmsted Parks Conservancy. Brian's joined the Olmsted Parks Conservancy in 2003 and has been an advocate for the sustainability and maintenance of the Olmsted Parks throughout the years. In 2019, Brian was honored in the Buffalo Business First 40 Under 40 for his work. And today we will be hearing a presentation on options for Route 198, what we commonly call the Scajaquada Expressway. So we're going to begin hearing a little history about Olmsted and then what the Olmsted Conservancy feels should be considered for this new Scajaquada. I'm going to call it Parkway. All right, Brian, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Dennis, and thanks for everyone who's able to tune into this again, sort of after the meeting. Unfortunately, we had some technical difficulties, but I will share my screen, pop it on full screen, and dive into the discussion. So, are we seeing my
Yes.
reconnecting with Fred?
Yes, looks good.
All right, great. With that in mind, we really want you to we spent a lot of time thinking about this title, and it really is about reconnecting communities here. But to start with, as Dennis said, a little bit of history. We all know Frederick Law Olmsted as a great parks builder, but he was actually much more, and really focusing on his principles related to public health and social justice, developed through earlier careers and experiences as a young man, really informed his sort of toolbox in terms of his work as a parks builder. This year, we are celebrating the 200th anniversary of Olmsted's birth and doing a lot of celebrations, hopefully you've all been able to participate in. But previously, 50 years ago, a public campaign was put together to celebrate, obviously, Olmsted's 150th anniversary of birth. And this was all on the heels of the historic preservation movement and the environmental movement of the 60s and 70s. And it really sparked the interest in protecting and restoring Olmsted's landscapes. We aspire in this year that celebrating Olmsted's 200th year, we're going to renew that appreciation in Olmsted's work, but we're really going to highlight those principles of public health and social justice that were the foundation and so important to him. So more than parks and landscapes, Olmsted's principles were, really key. The first of which is an epiphany. Again, he was a man of many careers, a literary man. So during early career as a scientific farmer, he traveled to England and came upon the photograph here, Birkenhead Park. So this is in the monarchy of England, but it was a public space open to people of all backgrounds, of all social classes. And he was sort of dumbfounded to see that we're finding these sorts of landscapes in England, but nothing comparable in the United States. He, again, as a literary man, wrote about this in a book called The Walks and Talks of an American Farmer in England. Encourage you to look it up. This was really sort of foundational, that this sort of access to public space was so important in the social structure. Additionally, as I mentioned, many careers, he was a journalist, and he traveled to the South and wrote about the living conditions in the slave states in the South. That all culminated in a work called the Cotton Kingdom, which was a very formative work. But he also worked as the head of the Sanitary Commission during the Civil War, got to see how the soldiers in the encampments, their living conditions and how it affected morale and health, and also ran a gold mine all the way out on the West Coast near Yosemite, and got to see the living conditions on the frontier. So all of these things building over time, shaping the ideas of how public health, how quality of life, enjoyment, and well-being are so foundational to our experiences as a person and are so important to our society. So he moved on, and finally his career in parks building began, as we all know, in Central Park and Prospect Park. And then he came to Buffalo in 1868 at the request of far-sighted civic leaders who asked him to design a park for the burgeoning city of Buffalo, as he had done in Central Park. Olmsted and his colleague Calvert Vaux not only designed the park, what we now know as Delaware Park, being that sort of complete landscape experience, but he created the first park system in the nation. This consisted of 6 major parks, all connected and accessed by parkways, a term coined by Olmsted, featuring broad tree-lined avenues whose junctions met in circular intersections. And these parkways connected the parks to each other and extended the green space beyond the park's boundaries into the surrounding neighborhood. Again, getting into that idea of parkland and neighborhood and living within a park. So Olmsted designed parks all across the United States, as we know, but the work he did creating the park system in Buffalo stands perhaps as his most innovative and significant achievement. So we're very lucky to have and really a wonderful opportunity to respect these beautiful places. Now, we live with those landscapes and that complete sort of park system for 60 or 70 years. And then, unfortunately, in the 50s and 60s, the highway movement began, and again, this predates the historic preservation, the environmental protections that we so value today. But the rise of the automobile, urban renewal, and redlining, truly decimated certain portions of the city, and is really the condition we find ourselves living in today. Some key points of that were really, again, the sort of ravaging of our natural features. Here's a before and after looking at the Scajaquada Expressway as it sort of ravages the Scajaquada Creek and Delaware Park. We again sort of items of the time. You see the Statue of David and the History Museum here. It sort of tore apart the cultural fabric, bisecting the park features. And sort of active recreation and passive lake enjoyment. We always like to say that this is where the Statue of David got a furrow in his brow when he was perplexed with what was going on around him. But even more so, and more to the point, and less of a joke, is the impact that it had on destroying these communities that surrounded these parks, specifically the east side of Buffalo through the destruction of Humboldt Parkway, which once connected Delaware Park to Martin Luther King Park. And the true human toll it took with this sort of not only the expressway we live with today, but the 10 years of construction and destruction of this community and how that affected people's lives, how that sort of reset the sort of relational structure of people's homes. If you lived on one side of the great cavern or the other, you basically no longer had an ability to be neighbors within this community. So again, terrible situation, which the Conservancy's role is always looking to how we can restore Olmsted's value to our community. The key component of that, as we see it, is really the coalition building. So the Conservancy is an important voice for the preservation of Olmsted's landscapes, but this is a coalition that affects, people's homes. It affects waterways. It affects transportation. And building these coalitions is such an important part of making sure that everyone's voice is heard in these conversations of how we undo this damage. So I'll go into a little bit more detail on both the Scajaquada Corridor Coalition and the Restore Our Community Coalition. So Scajaquada Corridor Coalition is really focused on the Scajaquada Expressway Corridor. We think it's important to, again, remove the expressway structures. Again, this doesn't mean remove transportation networks. It means the expressway in its sort of high speed, disconnected, limited access route design style, removing that, restoring Humboldt Parkway, revitalizing our neighborhoods, but also our natural areas. We think this will, again, revitalize communities. It'll increase economic opportunities, returning value to the land, reverse generations of social injustice, improve community health, and again, focusing on the landscape and the environment. And you can learn more about that going to the website sccoalition.net, and I encourage you to do so. But more so, it's about participation in a process. So the Greater Buffalo Niagara Regional Transportation Council is conducting a process. They're calling it Region Central, and they are currently at the stage of evaluating a few scenarios for mobility and determining a preferred scenario. So again, for the most current information on that, check out their website at the bottom of the page here. But to summarize it briefly, the 4 scenarios they put out there, again, this was back in June or May, I believe. They're suggesting perhaps the new future is removing portions of the expressway. Perhaps the new future is full removal of the expressway and sort of thinking about the whole road network around it. Perhaps it's creating an at-grade roadway, or again, they always have to sort of evaluate the status quo and just making improvements to that. So that's the stage that they're at. These are the scenarios that they put out, and again, we're requesting comments on. But the Conservancy and the coalition is really about thinking bigger, and really sort of a picture is worth 1,000 words. So in our advocacy and creating and developing a community conversation, we wanted to create visuals of what people, that isn't right in front of your nose in terms of what's possible here. So if we're rethinking this corridor, we could be reconnecting Delaware Park. So that's the lake and the meadow could once again become one park experience, not go to the lake, then navigate your way across a 4-foot sidewalk over a bridge and find your way towards a meadow. Even the way people talk about Delaware Park, they talk about the lakeside and the meadow side. This was supposed to be one landscape experience encompassing both of those features. We think about this as a creek corridor that needs revitalization. It's been channelized. It's been sort of ostracized from community. We've got cultural institutions. We've got academic institutions right at its shoreline. But this roadway is such a barrier between communities and sort of facilitating access to those natural features. We also think of this as sort of reimagining the whole Black Rock Harbor. So again, rethinking and sort of visualizing what is possible if we don't start with the idea of we have an expressway, we have an elevated expressway through here. You know, what is the potential of this, looking at it from another perspective. And certainly it's important to note that it wasn't just the Kensington Expressway that destroyed Humboldt Parkway. 50% of Humboldt Parkway was destroyed by the Scajaquada Expressway, Route 198, between Parkside Avenue and Delavan. So the Restore Our Community Coalition really focused on the restoration of Humboldt Parkway, and undoing the damage there is equally involved in both of these projects, and is a key partner in sort of rebuilding that connection between Delaware Park and MLK Park, and really healing that community. So their organizational goals are, again, restoration of Humboldt Parkway and the devastation caused, and the community around it, which again is so important as an Olmsted principle, that sort of social well-being and that public health. But it's really important to Buffalo as a whole to be rebuilding these connections amongst our communities. So again, encourage you to go to the website there, roccbuffalo.org, to learn more and get involved in that work. And again, the vision there is just how do we take this division within the community and rebuild that connection. Again, you can see roads are involved, but how are we prioritizing and organizing the movement of people around our city to create the highest and best value? So again, there need to mention that there is another process going on looking at the Kensington Expressway. And that process is again analyzing alternatives on how to sort of rebuild that connection. And again, encourage everyone, again, most importantly, to get engaged in these processes that are going on. We think there's a great vision for what's possible, but it's really only going to succeed if we get our community engaged in making these decisions for ourselves. So again, I encourage everyone to take a look. Again, we live in this community, but you can also study the community, and I would suggest studying this area. So you can hop in your car, drive up Delaware Avenue. You can see what Humboldt Parkway used to look like by driving up Chapin Parkway after you go around Gates Circle and head up Lincoln Parkway. And you can see these views, head up Delaware, and then move your way through the parkways as they exist. Again, what used to be a park road, now an on-ramp to an expressway, taking you through and down the Route 198 through Delaware Park, and then down what was Humboldt Parkway, again through and visualizing again what we have now, what we're living with. You can see the houses on either side of the corridor here, and all the way to MLK Park, seeing what's possible in terms of restoration of these landscapes and sort of rebuilding that future by looking at the past and the great value we had in our Olmsted landscape. So with that, that was an overview, again, sort of a call to action to get engaged in these processes. And again, we think that there's a great vision for the potential that we can learn by looking at our past. So again, look forward to this discussion and deeper dive into these issues.
Very good, Brian. Thank you very much for a very concise overview. And let's see where we can take this. Right now, the projects are separated. There's the 198, they use the numbers, and the 33 for the Humboldt Park Expressway. As you noticed in my introduction, I began the process of vision by using the word parkway versus expressway, because I think that sets a tone for a thought process that I hope is incorporated in the discussions going forward. That if we see them as parkways, that's an overview. The other one that there are budgets already established, from what I understand, for work on the 198, the Scajaquada. There's budgets, much larger budgets for the 33, the Humboldt. What's the best way to go ahead and connect these dots? But I'll add a third dot, and that's to ask if it's been part of the discussion. The concerns I've heard from many people that would support take the Humboldt project is that is it about rebuilding the communities that used to be, or is it about also building in ways to encourage people to not all flow through the park, but to perhaps go down Jefferson, down Main Street, down Amherst Street, down other streets along with the park, so that if you're the GBNRTC, you take into consideration Fillmore and all of these other ancillary ways to get around town that are underutilized perhaps now because of the current expressway layout. What's your thoughts on how to build all of that into the discussion legitimately?
Yeah, you raised some great points. Again, I'll make some clarifications. So you mentioned the term that there are budgets established. I would more say that there are commitments that have been made. So the governor has made a commitment of $1 billion. They're been talking about commitments of over $100 million related to the Scagacquata corridor, but both projects are in the process of kind of defining what they are and aren't. And I guess in terms of moving those projects along, GBNRTC, and I know you're going to hear from Mike Finn next week. They're developing the project, and the cost of the project is going to be determined by the alternative and the design. So they've got committed money, which is very important, but the project cost, could require additional fundraising. I know they're looking at fundraising in the same way. And again, I'd say a very key point to make with regard to the Kensington project is they're in the point where they're at the moment trying to set the project limits, and that is going to again impact how well it connects and intertwines with not only the project of Region Central, because again, you mentioned they are two separate projects. So if there is a gap between the limits of those two projects, we see that as a major problem in terms of solving the problem of disconnected communities, disconnected routes, destroyed commercial corridors, and they're wrestling with that, and they need to hear from the community that these two projects need to meet, they need to interact, and they need to, while they're different funding sources, while they're different agencies in control, that doesn't matter to the community. What matters to the community is connection and healing the community. So we're kind of still in the stage of having the opportunity to impact that versus asking them how they're going to solve it. We need to take that role seriously as community members.
Well, it's hoped that this program can be part of that process of engaging the community and searching for best solutions for a myriad of issues that are about the community, not just about automobile mobility, if you will. So, let's continue down that thought process. One of the aspects, if I were sitting in the GBNRTC's seat, is the movement of cars. You're hard pressed to show a worse outcome for cars, automobiles, even though others may benefit. So that how do you say, wait a minute, during the time of construction, as well, which becomes a learning curve usually during construction. You're shutting down things. You're forcing people to move in different ways than they're used to doing. But also the fact that a few years back we had a terrible accident, and we immediately the response was to reduce the speed limit on the Scagacquata. How do you propose that we help the GBNRTC move traffic and not terribly lessen it with perhaps some parts of the existing structure before you get to some grand design that might be far more encompassing, but at least get you moving in that direction? How do we think about that with just take the existing structure that you have as a starting point and reimagine it as a parkway, since we're already supposedly driving at speeds that are parkway speeds?
Yeah, I think what we learned when that sort of this reducing the speeds was something that the Conservancy and others had been fighting for many years, and were being told, couldn't be done. Maybe we can get it down to 40, but 30 is out of the question. Then, tragedy struck, which was horrible, a horrible moment. But it called for decisive action, and it was just, it's 30, and the world didn't end. There wasn't, catastrophic issues. It just became a much quieter, safer corridor, and you know, that was interesting in and of itself, as just sort of, I think people's perceptions become their reality in terms of what's possible, and sort of saying, well, like, there are these cars here, you see the traffic backed up here, and that will always be the case, and there's no scenario that means this could be better, we just need to manage it. And I think what's been great is GBNRTC, really made a strong case, hired a great consultant who has presented a lot of very interesting data, like really hard driven data that defies people's perceptions of what's possible. They're saying, it isn't, there's very few people that drive the full length of the corridor. The peak hour travels are not as bad as you think. And this is the data that they have from, it's kind of crazy, but it's coming from anonymous cell phone data. So they're able to sort of track the flow of people. It's not tracking any individual, but it's really getting a more accurate reading of where people are going and how they're using the road. And they're saying that everything, a lot of the things that we've perceived as being, untenable options are really more realistic than we had thought. So really the experts are sort of leading us there, saying that this is what the data is telling us, and it's not what you think. And like you said, the construction process, will be a learning curve in and of itself. People just habitually drive certain routes or take this certain way. Whatever we do, it's going to get reconstructed. People are going to have to modify their routes. And that's a perfect opportunity to sort of reconsider how you travel through the city, and by what modes and by what roads. So it's going to be a great learning curve, but really it's been the hired consultants of GBNRTC that are really providing me with the most surprising information about what's possible. And it's very exciting, and encourage people to, get engaged and see for themselves. But they're really great experts, got a really good team together. They're engaging the community in a meaningful way, and it's exciting to think about what's going to be possible there.
Brian,
again, they're the experts. I'm not the expert on this stuff, so I'd rather you hear it from Mike next week than me try and explain how they do their job.
Well, that's what we'll do. Brian, one of the other aspects, just to reinforce what you said, that startled me when I heard it, the cross traffic from the Niagara River area to the Main Street area is less than 10%. I remember that number when I first heard it, and you say it's really a local road. And in my own suspicions is, once we remove the toll gate on the Niagara portion of the expressway, the easiest shot, the cheapest shot, was to just go right downtown if you're going there, not go by way of the 198 to the 33 and come in through that door. And I think just a lot of behavior was changed. So yeah, dealing with the facts versus perceptions is a good part of this exercise. And I'm glad you're saying that they've been very reliable and forthcoming with data that helps make informed decisions. That's the great starting point.
Yeah, and they're really taking a very hard, serious look at the traffic. But what that gives us the opportunity is to look at all the other benefits. Like, if you can minimize this route, and those visuals we think are so important to be like, wow, I mean, what we could really get back if we do this right is incredible opportunity. We don't want to miss it.
Well, one of the quick thoughts I had, and I just throw it by you, just imagine what's in place right now. Get rid of the guardrail, put a nice planters or something in between, so it looks like a parkway, not a speedway, and have it as a single lane with parking on the right side, and then you could have no parking during rush hours if you wanted to for a couple of hours, but allow people to access the parks in a whole unique way with the existing road structure that's there. So you're not tearing everything out in, let's call it phase one of this reimagining the Scojaquada corridor. How does that sound roughly, without yay or nay, but just does it make sense as an option to even consider?
Yeah, I mean, I think that adds a whole nother issues. You think about these projects solely as a reconstruction, but again, if you just change how they're managed, or like the rules and regulations on the road, like you're saying, like if when the traffic is ultra light, there's on-street parking, it's going to be an adjustment, it's going to be a shock, but it'll slow traffic even further when you're dealing with parked cars right on the street. That's a fact of just roadway design. But also, again, yeah, like you're saying, you're increasing access to the parks in places people aren't used to it, and again, it can just take people out of their mindset. Whether that can be a part of the phasing of the construction process, I don't really know, but always interested in the idea of getting people to sort of look at these roads in a new way, and seeing again the potential benefits of changing things up.
Well, and that's why this 1-2 conversation, and it was so important, I felt, to have this redo. By the way, it is Thursday after Election Day. If we had done this on Election Day, we wouldn't know who our governor was going to be for sure. Now we know it's our same Kathy Hochul. So that's a good thing, I would think, from our perspective on this project and our role in the state. Let's put it that way. Upstate, anyways. So there's some more clarity, I guess, in acknowledging that it is Thursday after Election Day that we're recording this. All right, Brian, I trust you will do your best to alert the Conservancy's subscribers, members, networks, especially the coalition that you described, to tune in Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, and we will have Mike Finn. He's the new executive director for the Greater Buffalo Niagara Regional Transportation Council, acronym of GBNRTC, and having served on their bicycle pedestrian advisory group from '99 till 2003 as the chair of that. They are more and more aware that communities are made up of automobiles for sure, but they're really made up of people, and people walking, people riding bikes, people enjoying parks, people connecting with either side of the park. All of these are dimensions added to cars. It isn't just a car-centric design that we had in the 50s and 60s as a mentality that we're in our generation trying to correct. This is the moment, folks, for doing that correction. And Brian, your overview of the philosophy of Olmsted is a wonderful foundation for appreciating why the parks work, So, and are such a treasure of wealth that can't be measured in normal monetary means. But the more we appreciate what a treasure it is, the more you value and do everything you can to pass that treasure on to future generations. That's the moment that we're at right now. So with that, I'll thank you for your cooperation and agreeing to come back here. Certainly hats off to the library for reimagining the Imagine series on a Thursday rather than last Tuesday. And now in the archive is this very important, I believe, half hour or so that discusses this project. So let's do the best we can to utilize it wisely. And folks, we'll see you if possible next Tuesday, the 15th of November at 12:30. And again, we will have the executive director of the GBNRTC to continue this very same discussion. Okay, Brian, take care. Thanks again. See you, folks. Be well and good day.